how do we ensure that our design aesthetic and our quality is getting translated to the manufacturer? You know, your company's always worth what it's worth. You know, there's anybody out there that'll give you the money for what you need to do. It's who do you align with? Who do you align with morally? How do they see you? How do you think they see you? And I think hopefully it seems like we found that.
Where would you be happy? How big would it be for you to say, okay, we've checked every box. We did all the things that we could have imagined doing. And then what happens to you, Jacob?
Yeah.
When you hit that point, are you done? Are you bored? Where are you going from there?
Yeah, I mean, that's the golden question for sure. And I don't know if I have an answer to it. Yeah, so these are our custom bats that we can do. We do them with multiple colors underneath, but they're thermochromatic paint bats, so we call them color changers. So they change under heat. So when we heat this bat up, this has got a design underneath, and that fades to a green handle. But so at like 80, I think 84 degrees, it changes color, and then when it cools back off, it'll go back to black. But this customer wanted kind of a topographical map design that Braden put together, but they wanted their logo to show through. So when it heats up, it shows the map underneath and shows their logo.
Well, Jacob, let's start with, what were you thinking as you developed JAWBats? I mean,
Right.
The idea in your head, how did that begin? And how did you eventually, I presume, decide that, okay, this is a business I want to be in?
Right. Yeah, I probably wasn't thinking. I don't think a lot. You know, that's what my wife would probably say. But, you know, I was 15, 16, and I loved woodworking, loved baseball. So I figured, you know, let's make a bat. And the first one wasn't bad, and then they were, you know, pretty terrible after that. But, yeah, just went off and made bats for buddies and, you know, players, and made them for myself.
What did you need to make a bat? I mean, like a lathe?
Yeah, just a lathe. I was big into woodworking, so I got
Yeah.
into wood turning and did pins and bowls and, you know, the stuff that, you know, the wood turners make. And my family's very artistic, so that was kind of my artistic expression, I guess. And always loved creating with, you know, making stuff with my hands and feeling accomplished with something like that. And I had no patience, so they say wood turners are woodworkers with no patience, because it kind of comes together quick. But yeah, I just, you know, had good friends that would buy bats, and before you know it, I was like, okay, this is kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Went off to play college ball at Neosho County Community College in Chinook, Kansas, and had some business-minded friends on the team, and we'd sit and talk for hours. And before you know it, we, you know, have a website together and Twitter account. That's when kind of Twitter was big. And had a buddy that his dad was a lawyer, so he made an LLC and kind of made it official. And, you know, I had no idea what I was doing the entire time. It was just making bats and selling them. And, you know, I was decently good at marketing, being a younger kid and understanding kind of that world. But
Oh, wait a minute. You're a young kid, and you understand the marketing world. Tell me how you came to that conclusion.
I probably didn't.
Okay.
I just maybe understood how social media worked. I understood the social media marketing world, I guess, is a better
so
way to say
influencer
it.
marketing, things like that?
Yeah, so we would, you know, go after big accounts and do giveaways and, you know, for followers. And that was kind of our way to develop a customer base, is, you know, through Twitter. And we had a visual product, so it was easy to market through social media.
Okay.
But yeah, and before you know it, you know, you're selling a few bats here and there, and enough to make money as a, you know, college kid. And it was at that point, after my 2 years, you know, the baseball career wasn't going the way I wanted it to, and that's a whole nother conversation. But decided, you know, let's take a year off and go full force into this thing and see what happens. So
are you still in LLC?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So we changed to an S corp, and then once we brought on a partner, we went back to an LLC.
So you brought in a partner, investor partner, or
Yes, yeah.
operational partner?
Investor partner.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they wanted it to be an LLC?
Yeah, we, you know, partnership LLC. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, put a pin in that. I'm going to come back to that
for
in
sure.
a little while. So you're what, 18, 19?
Yeah, so 18, I think at the time when I started the company, or just about to turn 18. So it was 2012 in June. My birthday was late June. So I was almost 18 and, like I said, I had no idea what I was getting into, but I just loved it. It was a passion.
So did you have intellectual support, emotional support from family, friends?
Yeah, the most amazing parents anybody could ever ask for.
Yeah.
So fortunate in that regard. They supportive of anything I would ever done. And the late nights of making bats in the basement of my parents' house, probably making a ton of noise, and they just, I never didn't feel support.
Well, at least you weren't like playing loud rock music
Right.
and smoking weed down
Yeah,
there. You're
right.
actually doing something
Yeah.
useful, right?
That was my leverage against them. If anything ever bad happened, I was like, well, I'm a good kid. I'm just,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's all the support I could ever want from them.
Well, that's helpful. What about, well, I guess the question would be, when you were launching this at 17, 18 years old, what did you think was going to happen? I mean, you had a group of friends who were willing to buy bats from you. When you ran out of those friends,
Yeah.
what happens?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I had a small enough or decent enough customer base from social that, I never looked back. You always worry, like, this is not going to work,
Yeah.
But I always kept overhead low. It was just me. I was in my parents' basement. All I had was my, cost of goods, wood and materials. And so I was doing enough to at least make money on it,
Mm-hmm.
and you're too naive to understand that you're not really making money. You're making enough to buy more product.
Right. If you were actually operational as a full-fledged business,
Yeah.
you'd be spending a lot more than you were spending.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
You didn't need to pay yourself a lot.
Right.
Living at home.
Mm-hmm.
So your financials were skewed,
Yes.
right, in your favor at that point. Did you put together financial forecasts? Did you look at what it was going to cost operationally to scale the business?
No, I think, I was never great in school. I was okay. I just never applied myself. I didn't like sitting for a long time. My brain is chaotic. I'm a creative. I'm not so much a book smart person. But no, I think it was just more so I was doing what I loved, and that's all that mattered,
Yeah.
And I think if I would have got into the numbers and worked with somebody to invest money, I don't know if it would have stayed together. I think the road that I had ahead of me, if I would have known what was ahead, you just would never do it,
Yeah, I would probably agree with you on that. I mean, you're stepping into a domain that is entirely foreign to you, and sometimes I guess it is what they call blissful ignorance.
Right.
So I'm not going to be stressing over things I don't know.
Yes.
But when they occur, or if they occur, you're going to be adapting to that, or
yeah. I'd like to attest it back to being a baseball player. You're very used to failing.
Yeah.
In baseball,
Right.
if you bat 300, you're
doing great.
Hall of Famer. So I was pretty used to going 0 for 4.
Yeah.
So, and I had just failed in college. I didn't play it the way I wanted to. I didn't have enough playing time, and didn't do the things I wanted to do. So it's like, to me, I had already felt the bitterness of that, and I was like, this next thing is not going to be that way, So
yeah. So how deeply did you sink yourself into this at 18 years old? I mean, did you give up a social life?
Oh, yeah. I have a ton of great friends, but didn't see them. I've only been single for 2 months since freshman year of high school, so I always had a supportive girlfriend, but didn't invest time in them. They were never priority one. That's a struggle today with my wife, is she doesn't feel like priority one, and I work at that more and more, but I just no social life, worked constantly. It was a passion, so it's just you do what you want to do, and I don't regret those things at all. You got to put the work in, obviously, for anything that is successful, but it was just the nature of the beast, I guess.
Thinking back on it, would you have done anything differently?
I don't think so. The only thing I would change is trying to find employees sooner.
Yeah.
I developed a very
every little aspect of the manufacturing process, I'd like to say I mastered. Maybe I didn't, but I think I did. And it became very difficult when I did hire employees to let certain things go, because it was never up to what I thought it should be.
Yeah.
Whereas my employees were doing an exceptional job. It's just I was so stuck in the ways of how I wanted things done that I didn't allow the business to grow and products to be produced quicker and allow them to be managed properly. But yeah, it'd just be probably hiring somebody quicker for help.
I want to ask about the manufacturing process. Obviously, a young man or a boy with a lathe can make pieces of wood look like pieces of wood that do something.
Right.
But if you're going to be in the commercial market and sell things to people who aren't your friends or family, you have to develop some production consistency, some discipline with regard to the product and its quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
When did you start that?
Yeah, I think so. This industry, it's very, I think probably with any manufacturing industry, it's very difficult to produce at scale and have quality, and I noticed that there was few companies that were producing quality. So when I got finally to a spot where I felt like I was making a good product, I think that's a big part of it too, is being honest with yourself, understanding, what you're doing is not good enough, and being okay with that or not okay with that. So I developed a really good product in doing so, but I made it all by hand, which is not scalable.
Right.
So going from there, it was like, okay, what's my next step to increase production, become a little more scalable, but continue to be who you are with the quality of the product. And that was very difficult. And it's still a difficult part today, as we go from 5,000 to potentially over 20,000 bats next year. So it's just implementing systems, hiring people that, have a clear understanding of what your goals are with the product. So it's just, systemizing and hiring.
So your wood production manufacturing equipment is now computer controlled and things like that?
Yeah, so probably 6 years ago we bought our first CNC.
Okay.
And once we got that, it was very teachable and repeatable, and so it's now that machine has become almost obsolete to what we can produce, and how can we scale to the next machine, and then also the finishing side. How do we keep up with the machine that's pumping out bats? Because that's the easy part. Cutting a bat is very easy.
Yeah.
It's just how do you finish it and get it ready for use.
So we got about 3,000, just under 4,000 square feet here. Usually all this stuff is not here, but we are moving here February, March. So these are bags of sawdust that we have guys come and pick up for smoking pellets and burning pellets. So these are all maple sawdust. And then we've got our hand lathe over here in the corner. So I made every bat by hand for 10 years before we finally bought the CNC lathe. But we use that for sanding, and then I'll still cut bats by hand every once in a while. Then finally bought the CNC lathe back probably 5-6 years ago. This will cut a bat every 4 minutes. And then this is obviously all programmable, and we can do any bat model in there. And very trainable as well. So this is usually cutting bats all day long. They'll come off of this lathe, go to that one, and get sanded and ready for color. So we kind of have a nice workflow here. So this is our wood storage and finish area. This side we have all of our professional grade maple. It goes lightweight and then midweight to heavy over here. So depending on what bat model and size and weight people choose is what we start with wood weight wise. Like I said, this is all of our lightweight, so most of your high school, college kids are going to be in this range. And then some of your high school and a little bit heavier is over here. Weighted trainers with the really heavy wood up top up there. And then on the left side over here, we've got our birch. So this is all professional grade birch. We're a little low, we need to get some more in, but kind of same deal. We have our lighter weights to the right and heavier to the left. Birch is a denser wood at lighter weights than maple, so guys that are swinging big barrel drop threes, we tend to bring them over to the birch side. But it's all personal preference. On these racks, it's all of the bats getting ready for color. This is kind of my domain over here. Right before you guys got here, I was painting a whole bunch of Grinch bats from Christmas. So this is kind of our wood dyes and our airbrush paints, and we have other airbrush paints over there. And so this is kind of the art studio, I guess you could say. So usually this is full of whatever custom people order. And you know, obviously you can see a lot of Carolina blue, that's very popular. We've got one of the Grinch bats that we just finished, so that's one of our Grinch bats there. And then we have a airbrush artist that we work with out of Georgia that does some of our stuff. And he just painted this bald eagle American flag fungo. But usually this is full of just kind of random, you know, you get anything from black to the neon splatter bats and Grinch bats and whatever it may be. So a lot of fun comes out of here. So these typically get 3 coats of clear and then come back out and go to the engraving. So you can see we got like banana bat and the ice cream bat. Cotton candy is really popular. We got our weighted trainers for our softball girls. Those are really popular as well. But like I said, we usually have a whole bunch of different colors up on the wall. And then once bats are cured and done and ready for shipping, they come out to the table, they get labeled, ready for engraving, and get all the names and custom engraving put in, and then shipped out the door.
Is there a big deal in terms of the supply of the wood itself, and where do you go for that? Did you know where to go to source
No,
that wood? It's
No.
very special wood, right?
Yeah, it's very particular. I mean, above furniture grade, you know,
Yeah.
quality furniture grade wood. There's a certain process in order to get it structurally sound for hitting 95 plus mile an hour fastballs, and so we're all using kind of the same stuff. Obviously, it's, you know, the best of the best is what everybody uses for the top quality product. So at that point, it becomes, okay, how do I get this product at a good price to where I can compete and actually make some margins here and hire somebody? And that's a vicious circle of, well, I can't produce enough to buy more to get a better deal, and I can't sell more because I can't, you know, make enough money on them because they're too expensive.
Too expensive, yeah.
So it's a cycle of how do you get out of that, and I think you just kind of have to either raise money or just eat it for a little bit,
Yeah.
you know. And I think I ate it for a little too long, you know. But so it's, you know, doing a lot of research, like we kind of previously talked about, and calling around and finding the right source, and eventually you kind of figure out your sources. And,
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
So
if you, to illustrate to our audience your thinking, now that we've sort of established what the business is, and what you were thinking when you got into it, without getting into the size of the market and total available market and what you can serve of that market and things like that, and we can come back to that, where do you think this goes?
yeah.
Where does that end up?
Yeah, it's
You're a young guy, right?
Right.
So this is the last thing you're ever going to do?
Yeah, that's the goal.
Is it? Yeah.
You know, for me, it was more so about building a legacy brand,
Yeah.
more so than a bat. You know, so it's the jaw brand of, you know, that could go into sports or of any, you know, other than baseball, or it could be just baseball adjacent. So for me, it was always about branding. Number one, we've recently had a conversation as we kind of forecast 2025 and in the next 5 years, and you know, we see the other companies in our industry that are bigger than us, and they're not making money. You know,
Yeah.
the companies at the top, they're making money, but it's how do you get there? They've separated themselves so much from the pack. So I think that the answer is diversify, of course. You
Yeah.
know, within.
You mean diversify into different sports, or?
Yeah, I think baseball adjacent, as we've gotten into softball,
Yeah.
into the metal world.
Okay.
And then also if we decide at some point to go into other sports, you know, I think I'm very open to that, as I've focused on branding more so than product.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's we understand that this probably won't make us rich. You know, this is a very difficult industry to make money in. You're at the mercy of Mother Nature with the wood supply. And it's a small niche of the baseball world. It's, you know, there's not a ton of people that swing wood. There's high school
Yeah.
and college and pro guys. So
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
maybe 5% of the baseball world.
Yeah.
So it's next step is metal. We're very excited for that, and I think that will help supplement a lot of that.
To me, it's the big difference between watching a college baseball game and a professional baseball game is the sound of the ball coming off the bat. It's like doink.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We're watching college now.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's that's a whole nother conversation too. But I think college should be wood, at least in the Division I level. But
yeah, I'm a big fan of the sort of classic, the way things have always been done. But then I played hockey for years, and if I still had to use a wooden stick, it'd be a very different game as opposed to a fiberglass or composite stick.
Yeah.
And I don't begrudge the evolution of the technology. I think that's a good idea. The question is, how much does it change the game?
For sure.
Right. So if you look at like football, the protective equipment's gotten better and better. But the problem you have now with injuries is that the protective equipment is now being used as a weapon by those who are wearing it. Right. Mm-hmm. So I can hit you with my head because my head's reasonably protected, or I can hit you really hard. I remember as a kid watching hockey, and the goalies didn't even wear a mask. And so they didn't have the slap shots and the 100-mile-an-hour, pucks coming at you like you do today with these composite sticks. And it's changed the game completely.
For sure.
Completely.
Mm-hmm.
And if they, same like my theory about football, if you want to reduce the amount of injuries, then reduce the protective equipment that they're wearing.
Yeah.
Because
look at rugby,
even the hitter will stop doing it because, that hurt.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that anymore.
I think rugby, they have much better tackling because they know if I tackle wrong, I'm dead.
So the equipment side of things can evolve. The question is just how much does it change the game?
For sure. Yeah, I think baseball's probably because that's what I'm in, but they're constantly trying to speed the game up, you know, and what little things can we change? And I think what they've actually changed, I was very opposed to in the beginning, but as I watched the game, it's like, this is better.
The pitch count?
Yeah, pitch count.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I was saying that. It's like, I'm a purist, right? It's like, don't change the game. It's part of strategy, where the pitcher can take a little while or quick pitch you and things like that. And take that away, it's like, that's a part of the game, right?
Right.
But yet, I think the games are going better then.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I don't mind it.
Yeah.
And after a while, you kind of got used to it. So it's you don't even think about it much anymore. In the beginning, you're like, okay, how long is he taking?
Yeah. And I think as a race, a human race, we're very adaptable. So I think we get used to things pretty quick. But it's just, maybe give it some time, see how it goes. If it doesn't go well, I think MLB would be the first to take it away. But and there are some things that I've heard in the future that they were talking about implementing that I can't recall now, but it's like, man, I don't know about that one. But
has there been any real discussion in the NCAA about bringing wood bats back to college ball?
I don't think so.
No.
I think the metal industry is so big and there's so much money, especially with the larger companies. It's just there's no chance.
Not gonna happen. Because to me, it would improve the game. I
agree. It's a quicker, funner game with wood, and then 2 weeks later they get drafted and have to swing wood. So
right.
But
so you got to learn at some point. But
exactly,
assuming they're moving up. But in the meantime, you can pound away on a.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we see it the worst with the youth because they have giant barrels, at drop 5, drop 8, drop 10, and we'll have parents come to us and be like, "What wood bat is comparable to his metal bat?" It's like nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, it's not even close.
Yeah.
So if kids can hit with wood, they can hit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's something that my grandkids never learned, and because they had metal or composite bats, since they were kids, and that's all they played with, and that's all they know.
Right.
And to them, to go buy a wood bat would be like a collector piece.
Right.
That's something I'd put in a corner next to my old glove or something.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the business again. I'm fascinated by the fact that you started this at such a young age, kind of on a flyer, but you were in a position to do that. And I guess my bias is that if a young person at that age had come to me and said, "Hey, I want to go start this business." Okay, what do you know about it? Yeah, not much. Well, okay, then why do you think you can? Well, because I can make a bat myself in my parents' basement, and I have no overhead. Okay, is that the recipe for success? And now hearing you talk about now you're scaling, you're going to go from 5,000 to potentially 20,000 bats. How big can it get? How big in your mind? Are you going to be producing 200,000 bats a year at some point? If you're going to go from 5 to 20, what's the upside? How far does it go? What's the headroom?
I always we get asked that question a lot, and I think it's the answer for me is as many bats as we can produce that we still enjoy doing. If it's 20,000 bats and that's the cap, and we're not making a better product and we're not enjoying it, then that's it. And if it's 200,000 bats, then that's the number. I think as long as we're still producing what we're known for, I think we can make as many as we want. But
you can make as many as you want.
Well,
help me understand that, because
we can't. Virtually, no, we can't. It's we're always, how systemized do you want it to be is always a question, and we'd like to still have some human interaction with the product, and
sure.
All of it right now is, even though a machine makes the wood part of it, it's still hand sanded, it's still hand painted, still hand clear coated, engraved, labeled. A lot of hands touch it for a long time before it gets shipped out. And there's still some stuff like that we can systemize, like the spraying portion can be systemized, or automatic sprayers and stuff like that. But it's still a handmade product for the most part. There's no getting around that,
Yeah.
So
is that true of other manufacturers, or is this?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. The most automized product out there is probably cut on a CNC, sanded on the CNC. You don't really see many people using automatic sprayers. It's still a hand spray, just because it doesn't speed things up too much, and the cost to do that just doesn't make sense. So it's pretty much the same process.
So with bats, you have your length, and then you have your drop weight. So if you swing a 33 inch, if you swing a drop 3, it'd be 30 ounces. So 33 minus 30 is 3. So that's your typical drop 3 weight. This kid wanted to drop 2.5. So we're just going up a little bit in weight. And it's not an exact 1-to-1 ratio, but you kind of can get close. From there, we take it out to the saw, cut it to size to fit on the CNC. And I'm always checking for the straightest part of the grain for the handle, which looks like that side. And we just take a couple nibbles off each side just to get it exact. So this just kind of hammers in the center to get us started. Never hit my finger, now that I think about it. And then we always run barrel to handle. So I'm putting the barrel side in this way. So that's pretty much ready to go. You cut the ends off, we'll sand her down, get her ready for color, and that's it.
Your definition of success as it pertains to the business is what?
I think, legacy for sure. Obviously, financially, you have to make money. You can't have a business if you're not making money. Partners aren't happy if we're not making money, and so for me, besides financially successful, it's, having that legacy brand where people respect and we're sought after. And, I love what Nike, I'm a huge shoe guy. I love what Nike does with their shoe drops. You buy into a raffle to be able to purchase the shoe, which, how awesome would that be if we could do that? So that's kind of my goal is a legacy brand that's well respected.
So are you going to look for sports figure type affiliation agreements?
Yeah,
do you have any now, or
we've got into it quite a bit with NIL, with the college side of things, which is the Wild West right now. And our girls are great. Our guys are great. There's some great ones, but girls are a little more organized and willing and appreciative, and whereas the guys are, we're just dumb dudes. So, but we have a lot of great guys, that do a lot of good stuff for us, high school and college, and so we do a lot with that. And then that's one of the points of contention for 2025 is implementing some, if we can get into the pro market, some pro guys that would be kind of a brand ambassador for us, and then also social media accounts that are large following that could do a brand ambassador program with us.
Yeah. Okay. So when you think about your scalability, how big this could be, and you sort of talk about attenuating that based on what makes you happy, where would you be happy? How big would it be for you to say, okay, we've checked every box. We did all the things that we could have imagined doing. And then what happens to you, Jacob,
Yeah.
when you hit that point? Are you done? Are you bored? Where are you going from there?
Yeah. I mean, that's the golden question for sure. I don't know if I have an answer to it.
Well, you don't have to.
Right. I think I love what I do, and I don't ever see myself not being in the business at some capacity, whether that's just hanging around and being the annoying guy that's still around, or if it's being, fully in it, still helping with production and sales. And I think as long as I'm still loving it, I'll be as involved as I want. My favorite side of it now is really product development and player development with the high school and college guys. My career is cut shorter than I want it to be, and I want to do everything I can to help the next player not have that experience, So that's been a really enjoyable process for me. And every athlete misses the locker room, and I think that's kind of my way to kind of still be in the locker room.
Whatever choices you made in the past have led you to here, and this is not a bad spot.
Right.
So, you can regret certain decisions or wish you'd have made a different decision, but you're here now and you're doing this, and it seems to me that you're happy doing it. So
yeah, I feel like it is what
else is life
do.
about except being happy doing what you're doing? Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Once you kind of learn that, I think it takes the pressure off of a lot of things,
Yeah.
So no, I feel like this is what I was meant to do, and I think you maybe mentioned earlier that you didn't really consider yourself an entrepreneur, and I think I'm the same. I think I'm good at making bats, and maybe have enough common sense to understand how not to screw up entirely, and then rely on smarter people than myself to kind of help build that up. But yeah, I'm not very creative in the business world and smart in that way, and so yeah, I kind of have imposter syndrome for sure with that.
Well, I think we all did or do, and it's not, I don't think, unusual to have that from time to time because you are trying to do things you're not very good at. I actually responded to a post on LinkedIn the other day where they were talking about Jessica Alba, the actress, and how she got screwed in this company that she had created. And the company was doing reasonably well, like $100 million a year. But the investor had triple redemption rights, priority rights. And so they would triple their money back before she got a nickel, right? And everybody's like, well, how could people taking advantage of poor Jessica Alba? It's like, well, Jessica Alba had the resources to go get the best legal opinions she could have gotten, and she probably didn't, because the mistake a lot of us make, and when I say a lot of us make, I've probably made the same mistake, and maybe you have too, is that we somehow equate an investor's interest in our business as they like me too. And that's not necessarily the case. They like the business. They'll put up with you. They might even like you a little bit. But the minute you make a mistake or the minute you go in the wrong direction, they're there to correct you.
Yeah.
I've had more investors ask me what keeps you up at night than they've had ever asked me what helps me to sleep at night.
Yeah.
Right? They want to know what struggles you're having. They want to know what your problems are. They want to know where you're going to go off the rails.
Yeah.
And here's poor Jessica Alba. It's like, I got similar thing happened to me, not nearly as grossly bad as that was. But what happens is, and you're in the same boat, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but given that we have limited resources, we can't afford to go hire the biggest white shoe law firm to represent us. We go hire adequate counsel that we think is good enough to go do what we need them to do. And then the investor comes to the table with a crack deal team and the best legal minds doing transactions multiple times a year because they've done them before. They know what they're doing. This is not their first rodeo, but it's your first rodeo.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe your second one. You'll do this once or twice in your lifetime. They do it every week.
Right. That's their business.
And so they should be better at it than you are. And if you end up getting a good investment with a good investor who's supportive, great.
Yeah.
But if you get a little bit less than that, it's probably going to happen more often than you think.
For sure.
And it's sad. But I think a lot of us who are creative, like you are, you can mistake their interest in your business as if they like your business, they must like me.
Mm-hmm.
No, not necessarily. And I've made that mistake, and I've gone up against some really smart people in that business, the venture capital business or private investment business, and I can't match them. These are top MBAs from Stanford and Harvard and places like that, and they've got, lawyers from Yale, and I don't.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah, for sure.
And so if they beat you at their game, right, you cannot be a financial whiz or an investment whiz at the same time you're making great bats.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Nobody should expect that of you, and they know that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the sad part, is they already know that.
Right. Yeah. You saying all that, I do feel very fortunate for our situation, and my wife is a very, very smart person.
Yeah.
And I think if you go off intuition and, your company's always worth what it's worth. There's anybody out there that will give you the money for what you need to do. It's who do you align with? Who do you align with morally? How do they see you? How do you think they see you? And I think hopefully it seems like we found that. And, we work with the greatest people, and I feel very fortunate. But at the same time, I understand that it's an investment. They have to get their return, so I am very compelled and work very hard to, get that back for them, because it benefits both of us.
Sure.
So yeah, I think, like I said, we're just in a very good, fortunate position, and hopefully we can. I think communication obviously is a big part of that too. And if you have concerns, address those concerns. If they do, they should with me. And you got to be reasonable with yourself. If you have weaknesses that they address, you better get after it and address those. So
yeah. Do you have angel investors or institutional investors?
Institutional.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were approached a couple of years ago by a wonderful capital group that it's kind of got into it as a passion project for them.
Okay.
He sold his company. It's in the medical world. It was Hugh Freedy. I don't know if you're familiar with that medical device, kind of for dentists and oral surgery stuff. But always very passionate about sports and baseball and men's fast pitch, and so started this company to invest in small business sports groups. They really enjoyed our product, and I felt like we built a lot of leverage with the quality of product that we produced and the branding that we had built, and that ultimately is what kind of helped the decision. And yeah, it's been a great partnership so far.
What does the investor expect back?
That's a good question. It's probably something I should know.
Well, what do you think they want?
Yeah,
what do you think they're going to do? I mean, long term. Let's because I gathered when I asked you the question earlier about how you see this long term, it sounded to me like this is something that Jacob feels like he could be doing for a long time, because you think about legacy and the long term aspects of the value that you're creating, right? And that's great. You're not in it just to go make a bunch of money, right? I presume. Although having an amount of money is a good thing. Makes life a lot easier if you have resources. But what does the investor want, and when do they want it?
Yeah. I've not been pressured on time, but to me what they want is to establish themselves more in this wood bat, because they've had multiple investments in the wood bat world, and I think for us they saw the potential for it to be an actual built brand, to kind of take majority of, well, not majority, but a good section of the industry, and put their name in it.
Yeah.
And with me being young and more focused on the branding side, I think that's why they came after us. And he's a lover of art, and I think his mom owned an art curation company, and so he understands the creative and our artistic side of things, which I think is a very important piece to it, and allows me to do things that I want to do, and I couldn't be more appreciative of that.
But you don't think they have a time horizon for you?
Obviously, they want. We've been focusing more and more the last 6 months on our growth for the next 5 years, and because we've made a little bit of money, but as we invest more in employees, and it becomes very hard to be profitable.
Sure.
So they would like to get us more profitable, and obviously, make their investment, make money.
How do they get out? They have equity, they have loans.
They have equity.
Equity. So somebody has to buy your shares at a price for them to get whatever it is they're going to get out of this.
Right.
Okay, but you also told me you're an LLC.
Mm-hmm.
So are they taking losses in the form of their percentage ownership of the business if you're cash flow negative or operationally negative, or what's?
Fortunately, through this whole process of investing in, USSSA certification and all the metal bet side, they're assuming all the liabilities. So if this doesn't work out with all the investment into the metal bat world and MLB certification, they assume all the liabilities, and JAW does not, which I was very appreciative as well. So maybe
how do they get out of that then? If let's say the metal bat thing doesn't work out, but the wood bat's doing great,
right?
Do they just take the losses and write them off?
I think that's the plan.
So that's the reason they're an LLC.
Mm-hmm.
You're an LLC.
Correct.
Okay.
From how I understand it.
Okay. Well, the reason, and I told you I was going to come back to this
Mm-hmm.
when you first mentioned the LLC thing, because there's a federal policy in the IRS sponsored by Congress called the Startup Act,
Mm-hmm.
which passed in 2000, originally in 2011, and then it got changed in 2012. So I think in 2011, capital gains tax, I think it was like 30 or 50% of whatever your capital gains would be in a sale of your shares would be exempt from capital gains tax, which was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
In 2012, they changed that to 100% is exempt from capital gains tax up to a maximum of $10 million per owner. So if you're an owner, your wife's an owner, or these investors are owners, and they got founders' shares, more or less, of a C Corp, then at an exit of some value on your equity, your shares, all of you would be exempt from capital gains tax up to $10 million each, which is a goodly sum of money, right? And I know this because I just was the beneficiary of that.
Right.
When I've talked to attorneys who support and work with early stage companies, many of them don't know about this.
Right.
I had one guy, I won't mention his name because I fired him right afterwards, who had no clue about it. And yet he purported himself to be a startup lawyer. And I said to him, okay, I want to start a new company and I want you to make a C Corp out of it. Oh, Don, that's a bad idea. Why? Oh, nobody's doing that anymore. Okay, are you familiar with the Startup Act? Section 1202 of the IRS? No. I said, okay, then I understand why you're saying what you're saying, but you're flat out wrong. And when I explained to him what this was, and I sent him some materials to read about it, he got back to me and said, I had no clue. I thought, then how are you a startup attorney if you don't have a clue? At least give your clients a choice. I mean, I would sit down with you and your investors at the table and say, look, you have equity. I presume I don't know if it's founder shares or not, but there would be a way for it to become founder shares if they weren't initially founder shares, because you could basically buy out your own corporation with a new one. But nonetheless, I would suggest, I'd just be my suggestion, that you guys sit down at a table with somebody who actually understands Section 1202 and see what would, in the long run, be a better gig.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you expect to make money with the metal bats or wood bats or whatever, if you offset any investment you're making with more profit than loss, and the long-term goal is that your equity rises in value and that the exit for them or you becomes somebody buys your equity at some multiple of whatever it is when they came in,
right,
there's going to be a capital gains of some significance that's going to get taxed at 25% or so, or 20% plus the state. I think the state's another 5 or 7% if you live in Kansas. I think it's 5.7%. So effectively 25.7% of your capital gains is going to get wiped out in taxes. So if you sell it for $10 million, well, expect about $7 million back.
right,
Well, if you were under Section 1202, you keep the $10 million.
yeah.
And not too many people know about that.
Right.
I'm surprised that, again, it depends on the level of sophistication of the investor and what the investor's goals are. But given that the fact that your investor has equity, I would think there's going to be a capital gains event at some point,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That they might want to shelter.
Yeah.
Some. But to me, it would be worthwhile to maybe have that conversation with them at some
Yeah,
point.
definitely. Yeah.
And we talked about, part of this is trying to educate people too about these kinds of things. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of new businesses are being started as LLCs or pass-through organizations like an S-Corp.
Right.
Because people think you're going to have a bunch of losses in the beginning, and they want to hedge their investment with the capture of these losses.
Right.
And my personal bias about that is, if my investor's already hedging on me, does that show a lack of confidence? That they need a bunch of, it's like back in the day, not too long ago, there was these investor tax credits. Well, if I couldn't offer up an investor a tax credit, they're like, well, I can't invest. What do you mean you can't invest? I thought you liked the business. Yeah, but I'm not getting a tax credit. Okay, the only time the tax credit matters is if I lose. So are you playing the pass line or the no pass line? I'm not sure which one.
Right.
And so it always came back, and at least my thinking is that that's a negative bias.
Mm-hmm.
And in the parlance of playing craps, if I'm playing the pass line and you're playing the don't pass, I move on.
Right.
Because you're just creating a negative aura for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
I don't want to be around that.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you know that right off the bat,
Well, yeah. I mean, at least in craps, you can see where they're putting their money. You're like, wait a minute, you're betting against me? I'm moving on.
Yeah.
I'm going to roll this one out and be done.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Startup Act and the Section 1202, it is a boon to, I think, any founder
Yeah.
to have at least that $10 million exclusion, because it's a lot of money.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, if you sell it for $100 million and it's all coming to you, you're going to pay the tax because I got a crap ton of money anyway. But if it sells for somewhere between 10 and 20 million, and you own half of it, and you can shelter 25% of whatever you would have gotten out of this thing, it'd be a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, something to bring up. I appreciate that.
So yeah, I'm glad we got a chance to share that, because unfortunately, I've seen too many young companies formed as pass-throughs and wonder, why aren't you a C Corp? And what it says to people like me is, you don't expect your outcome to be that amazing, right? It's going to be okay. It's going to be good, but not crazy good.
Yeah.
And so it's always nice to have investors who are on the same page you're on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and maybe that was not known, like the situation you talked about, or maybe they are hedging, and this industry is very hard to make money in, and unless you don't separate yourselves, with branding or whatever it may be, I don't know you can make much money in this industry. So,
really,
it just seems that way. Maybe I'm jaded.
I don't know. Can you just? I don't want to press into too many private details, but can you give me an idea of what your gross profit margin is on a bat?
Yeah, so we right now our cost is probably about, the wood has gone up a little bit this year, so we're gonna have to reevaluate. But our cost is about $75 for custom, and we sell it for $220.
Okay.
And then a lot of it, there's a lot of discounting for team sales and retail, of course, and so a lot of time, you hardly ever, unless it's individual customs through the website, which we do a lot of.
Yeah.
You're discounting quite a bit to compete. So that the margins are just tough.
Yeah. Okay. But you're at a 60-70% gross margin now.
Right.
Right. And you give up discounts of 10, 20%, 30%, somewhere in there. And so net, you're 30% margin or so.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as good as software, but
right.
It's not software.
Yeah.
You're actually making a thing.
Right.
And things, if you can get 50% margins, more or less, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
You should be able to make a nice business out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about distribution. So, I walk into Dick's Sporting Goods and I'm looking for a JAWBAT. Is it there?
Not at Dick's. We're at Shields.
Okay.
So we do have an account that we're looking to start with Dick's Sporting Goods. We're trying to evaluate if it's the right move for us right now. Shields has been great. Kansas Shields, I think, is the #1 baseball store in the country.
Okay.
Anytime anybody from around here goes to Shields, they just know it's packed. It's
Right,
such a great
yeah,
place,
yeah.
and the people that run it are great people, and they've been so nice to work with.
Yeah.
With baseball, and I'm sure with softball as well, there's a lot of good boutique baseball stores around the country, and especially in Georgia, where Lake Point is, which is the largest tournament, for high school, college kids in the country. And so we have product there. We need to get a little more consistent with them.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's kind of our retail. And then other than that, various, small boutique stores all over the country, and then a lot of individual custom sales through the website.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just cutting the little end pieces off to get them ready to closer to final product. And then now we can check weight, see how off or good I was. So we're right at 32 ounces. We're supposed to be at 31 ounces. So I'll sand her down, take about an ounce off with sanding, and cup it, and it should be perfect. So, yeah, I was bad. I still got it. All right, and then the final touch here, we'll take our steel rod and compress the barrel to make it super hard. And there it is.
What are your biggest challenges? What do you see? I mean, we've touched on a lot of topics, right? Margins are tough, and sourcing the right wood and getting the right product and controlling quality and things like that as you scale. Of all those things, or maybe something you haven't mentioned, what keeps you up at night?
Yeah, I think the hiring process
Is it?
Yeah, it's just, hopefully you bring somebody in, and I'm not confrontational, which has been difficult for me. And I'm let me just do it kind of guy, whereas you can't teach people if you just take over and
Right.
So, the more we hire people, letting go of the things that I really love doing. And right now I color all the bats, and that's been a point to where I'm the bottleneck right now, and it's an issue. So, and I'm having trouble letting go of it. We've interviewed someone to come in and paint, and they're awesome. So I think they'll be great for us, and I'm excited. There are parts of me that it's like, this is what I need to grow, and that excites me. So if I kind of prop it up that way in my brain, it makes it okay. So I think I get frustrated with myself that I've hamstrung the business so much in the last 5 years. And then sourcing of materials. Wood is always a difficult part, is getting your wood in at a reasonable cost. And as we've grown and kind of become more respected, that's become easier.
Yeah.
And I think when we bring in another company that we're absorbing, we'll have better buying power from there as well. So I think that'll get better, but there is the threat of Mother Nature at all times.
Sure.
If Canada or the Northeast has a mild winter, we don't get as good as yields as we hope to.
What about the Trump tariffs?
That is a concern with the Chinese manufacturing, with our metal side. Yeah, so that's to be determined.
Okay. I know he's threatening Canada too.
Well, Canada's already extremely difficult to ship to for us anyways.
Yeah.
So, the international stuff is it's not a big part of our business, but we like it to be.
Yeah.
How do we work around that? And then also the communication aspect of, I'm not good at not making something. So when we source our metal bats and our batting gloves from China, how do we ensure that our design aesthetic and our quality is getting translated to the manufacturer, which, they're well established. They've made great bats for many companies, but we've had trouble with the design coming back not the way we want it to, and situations like that, which I'm new to it, so it's just going to take some time. One of our employees in the partnership goes over to China to source product there for many, many years. So if I utilize him a little bit more, be getting better at asking for help, I think is a thing that I need to do. But
the couple of experiences I had with dealing with Asia on products and manufacturing and assembly and things like that. The one lesson I learned, I'm happy to share it with you. I don't know if you do this or not, but if you're not, you should, is we only communicated via text. These calls where, you talk about things and you make decisions and action items, and then you come back a week later and you have another call and they're like, oh, I never said that. Yeah, you did. What? No, no. This is what we agreed to. Well, no, that's not what. Yeah, that's what we agreed. No, and I just got to the point where we're just going to chat. I'm going to have a document. Then we're going to follow up with a transcript of our conversation. It's no other way we're going to go.
Yep.
And if you see something in the transcript that you think you didn't say or you didn't mean to say, you better tell me now, because a week from now when we get back together, it's gospel.
Right.
And I learned that because you can't speak their language. They think they're speaking your language, and you're like, I didn't get half of that. And we tolerate it. It's funny, Americans. You say you're not confrontational, and I think in general, when we're dealing with suppliers, especially in the Far East, whether it's India or China or Singapore or anywhere else, they think they're speaking English,
right?
And they went to school to learn English. The only problem they have is that they're only talking to each other with this English that they're learning. So they develop really poor habits with regard to their accent or their pronunciation. And you think they're saying one thing and they're saying something else. And we also know that we're missing 30-40% of what they're saying.
Yeah.
I had one Indian guy that worked for us, the development team over there, and we got on these calls and he'd be talking, and he talked very, very fast, because he thought he learned English, right, in the King's English, and when he went to school in India. And what was unique about him is he also had a mustache that covered half his top lip. And it's like, I can't even get the lip reading part of this, because that was a big part of me trying to understand what the guy was saying. And I finally said to him at one point, I said, Arun, you're going to have to shave that damn mustache, because I can't understand half of what you're saying. Or just slow the hell down.
Right.
And he would slow down for about, 3 milliseconds, and he'd be right back at, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And you're like, dude, I'm not getting half of this. I'm not even half. And it's a problem we have as Americans, where it's like we're ashamed to say, I don't understand what the hell you're saying.
For sure.
And we just don't stop. It's like, stop. I don't know. I can't understand a word you're saying.
Right.
So we don't want to be rude.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I've had, everything's been email, which is
good.
The best way to do it. We've had one call.
Yeah.
And it was a disaster. So it's like, I never want to do that again.
I know.
So,
yeah.
But yeah. So I think your story, I think every major college student, has had that situation with a teacher at some point.
Yeah.
Just can't understand a word they're saying.
I've seen it with doctors that come from other countries. It's like, slow down. I understand you learned English as a kid, but you didn't speak to other English-speaking people. You spoke to other natives in your community who speak as poor in English as you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's been probably the biggest challenge through this whole thing. And then, of course, the wait times, and with our wood bats, if we have an idea, we just make it. Whereas the metal, we've been developing for 1.5 years.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, you get prototypes and go back and forth. First article, is it good enough? Is it not good enough? And I've been through that, and it's I don't want to say it's a fun process, but it's a really interesting process.
Yeah.
Offshoring manufacturing or assembly or whatever it is you're offshoring. And dealing with different cultures and things like that is actually fun. I made a number of trips to Asia because of that. And they're wonderful people when you're with them. They want to take you out and go drinking and karaoke and things like that. But when it comes down to business, they're damn good at it.
Right.
And you better be as good.
Yeah.
Or you'll get taken advantage of.
For sure.
You got to know that going in.
They've done it many times.
Oh yeah, you're not the first American to show up on their doorstep.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm the first on my side, but man, they've done quite a bit. So yeah, it's something I look forward to getting better at. Obviously anything that we can produce and sell that we don't have to make in house, that frees up our time to do the things that we need to do.
Yeah.
And So that's been a very, how can we create products that we can sell that we don't have to spend all this time on?
Yeah.
And it's tough for me because I love the manufacturing. It's because I'm a control freak. I like making sure that, the quality that I envision is what comes out. But you can get that if you just, communicate properly.
No, I think, though, there's a particular, I don't know, proclivity or whatever you want to call it for manufacturing. I did. I mean, my first two companies we made something.
Yeah.
I made a widget, some hardware, software, things that go together. And it was the best part of the process. I mean, just seeing the thing, right? It's like, you have it in your mind what you want it to look like, and then one day you kind of give birth to some version of that, and it just gets better and better with time. And there's certain satisfaction in holding that thing in your hand and going, I created this, My last business, though, that was most successful was a service business. Mm-hmm. And it was really a change in culture for me because it was way more about people than anything else I'd done before. Before, it was a little bit more about product, right, and process and things that I was, like you say, you can control. But people, culture, the way your people talk to other people who are your customers, who you depend on for every nickel you make, that's a whole different thing. And I kind of struggled with it, I think, in the beginning because I don't know, I thought I could control everything. And when it came to people, it's a lot harder to do.
Yeah, you can't.
No.
You can't control other people, right? It's control the controllables. So it's and you try not to stress about the things that you can't control. And I'm a people pleaser, so I want everybody that ever interacts with us to come away super happy and satisfied. And sometimes you just can't make some people happy.
Well, I used to think I was like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized later on I wasn't. Mm-hmm. I learned to say no because I had to. And I knew I had at times to say, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen.
Right.
No, I'm sorry, we're not going to do that for you. No, I'm sorry, you can't have Monday off. No, I'm sorry, And then I learned, quit saying you're sorry, Don.
Right.
Because you're really not sorry.
No.
I'm sorry, but this is the way it has to be. No, Jacob, this is the way it has to be. I'm not sorry, But that's that, I don't want to confront you. I don't want to be a bad guy. I want to be a good guy. And we have that in us. I think, if you're a good person generally and, you have Christian values, you're that guy, right? You don't want to be a jerk. You don't want to be an asshole.
Right.
On the other hand, though, sometimes you kind of have to, no, we're not doing that.
Right.
I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate your input, but we're not doing that.
Yeah, I'm bad with sorry. Now that you say that, it's like, oh, man.
Yeah. Well, I think it was a Jordan Peterson thing. Quit saying you're sorry for everything. You're not sorry. You're not really sorry. You're just sorry I have to tell you this.
Right.
Well, I don't even want to be sorry I have to tell you this because you really need to hear this.
Yeah.
And so instead of apologizing and taking the edge off of it, let me tell you what it is I want to tell you. And then you can feel however you want to about that. And if you feel bad about that, well, I'm sorry you feel bad about that.
Yeah.
I'm not sorry I said it,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that reverses the equation from, hey, I'm sorry I have to say this to you, to I'm sorry you feel that way, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Yeah, we get a lot of that with the holidays. People expect so much, especially with Amazon and stuff now. Everybody expects free shipping, next day shipping, and quick turnaround, and it affects me and my wife terribly. It's been a huge contention point for us. Anytime we're around our busy times, like the summer or Christmas time. It's been a huge stressor on our relationship, and I'm trying to get better at that. And a lot of that is you don't have to please everybody. And somebody that ordered yesterday, you don't have to bust ass to try to get it out the door because they didn't make the cutoff.
Didn't make the cutoff time.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry you messed up, and I wish we could correct that for you. I had just that same experience just this 2 weeks ago with Warby Parker. I bought some contact lenses from them, and they didn't get them shipped on time. And when I called them, they said, because your credit card didn't go through. And it turned out I made the mistake of using my debit card, and they're in wherever they are, Portland or something like that, or California. And my debit card, if I don't tell the bank that I'm traveling or I'm in some other state with this, they don't let me use it. And what was I thinking? I was supposed to use a regular credit card. Why did I use my debit card? And so it wasn't their fault.
Yeah.
And they weren't apologetic about it. They're like, we couldn't run your credit card. And so we didn't ship. And until you called us back, well, you left me a voicemail. We left you a voicemail 2 days ago. Well, I was on vacation with my family, so I wasn't paying attention to voicemail. And so it was all my fault, and so, but my first reaction is, oh, those guys, why couldn't they ship this thing? But they might have called you and you, well, I'm really sorry we didn't get this out for you. Well, we didn't get paid, so we're not shipping it. Let's talk about where you are today and where you're going to be at your next inflection point. So you're getting the metal bat manufacturing process and the folks in China together to get this done. You haven't marketed a metal bat yet, right?
Not really. Yeah,
Okay.
not to what we want to.
So where's JAWBats in 2028?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think our goal, this is the big turning year too for us as we're moving and bringing those products in. For 2028, I envision, a really well established metal bat product for both softball and baseball, and then an even more established wood bat in pro market and youth and high school and college as well. And I see us, holding a lot more percentage of the industry because I think through our branding and we bring a very young aspect to this industry, whereas it becomes kind of dated. There is one other company that we look up to that has done a really good job with that. But I see us, sales-wise, it could be $5 million, it could be 20, 30 million, depending on how well the metal world goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are my goals for the next 4 or 5 years.
How big can it be?
Yeah, that's another good question. All I can go off of is what I've seen others do. And there's a company called Victus Sports. They were bought out by a company called Marucci Sports, which I'm sure you know that brand. They own bomb bats and lizard skin grips. So it's a four-headed monster owned by Fox Racing, which is a very interesting purchase. Yeah. But it's $500-some million purchase price from Fox, and they're the top dogs. They control over 50% of the MLB market or close to, and they make an exceptional product for how big they are. I know Victus, who's the one we really look up to, they'll go through, in their busy times, 20 skids of wood a week. Yeah. And
so how big does that make them from a revenue perspective? Do you know?
That's a good question. I'm not sure on the exact numbers, but 20 skids of wood is 333 billets per skid. So they're moving product.
So do the math real quick.
Yeah, I'm not a good math guy,
but even $200 a bat. How many bats is in the skid?
300. Yeah.
300.
Yeah.
Okay, so 300 times 200, right?
Yeah.
60,000.
Yeah.
And
that's weekly.
Weekly.
Yeah.
Okay.
And on their busy times, so averaged out a little bit.
Okay, so $250,000 a month.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so $4 or $5 million a year.
And they do metal as well, so that could just be in wood and So I could see. I know one of the metal bat companies does close to 10 to 20 million right now just in metal. So that's your money making side because the margins are so much better and you don't produce. And there's such a bigger part of the market that buys it. So they could be doing 20, 30, 40 million, I think easy. So yeah.
So you by 2030, 100 million?
That's the goal. If we can get into sports, outside of baseball and softball, I think that's very reasonable.
So what's the next step outside of baseball? Where do you go from here?
I haven't thought about that too much. I haven't really thought about it at all. Recently, it's been, I've always known that it was Jaw Sports. I love clothing and apparel, and maybe it's into something like that, or it's cleats and shoes and. That's my other passion, the fashion side of things. So maybe it goes into something along those lines. And basketball. I've always loved basketball, but So
What are you going to make, a basketball?
that's a good question. I just threw that out there.
I'm wearing my Kevin Durant's
Right.
right now.
Yeah, basketball shoes maybe. I saw your KDs earlier. But yeah. But yeah, I just kind of going off the cusp right now.
Yeah, this is a really cool brand.
Yep.
UNRL,
Yep.
Unreal.
Yeah, I love the stuff they've been
The
producing.
product they make is outstanding.
Mhm.
I only buy it because the material and everything about it, the stitching, everything is just so perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a super high quality product for
Mhm.
what you pay for it compared to a Nike shirt or
Right.
Under Armour or whatever. This is just better.
Yeah.
The collars are, actually stay up and
Yeah, I think they're kind of giving Viore and them giving Lulu a run for their money for sure.
Yeah.
As Lulu's become and has always been outrageously priced, but
Yeah.
I guess that's part of the lore too.
Well, I think that's, part of what you're into though with these
Mhm.
custom bats. You're not selling to the indigent,
No.
inner city high school, team or anybody like that. And while you probably have an opportunity in that market at some point, the custom market is the affluent buyer,
Yeah.
right? So what do I want when I go to the store? I want quality. I don't give a crap what brand is on it, quite honestly.
Mhm.
And I didn't know Michael E. Jordan made this, and I didn't know what UNRL was until I walked into Shields, and they no longer have Patagonia
Mhm.
because Patagonia pulled out of all the big box stores, and they replaced it with this brand. And I thought, well, that's a bold move, right? But they're from Minnesota, so it seemed to make sense. But I bought a few things, and I'm thinking, this is amazing stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm plugging them. They should be a sponsor.
I know, no free ads. Right?
No, I mean, and I don't mind talking about
Right.
brands that I really admire, and I think this brand is fantastic.
Yeah.
Compared to a lot of other things that are out there, I've spent a lot of money wearing everybody else's logo, and I don't mind wearing this guy's logo because it's a great product.
Right. Well, and that's why we respect, the Victus and the Marucci because they make a good product. Like if you don't, then I have trouble respecting what you do.
Yeah.
Because to me, it shows intentions are wrong, personally. But and the same thing with clothing. You want to get value out of a piece of clothing that you're purchasing. So.
Well, and I want to be able to wear it because I don't like buying stuff.
Right.
I always say this, and I might get frowns from some people, but women and men are very different in the way they shop. Women shop, men buy.
Mm-hmm.
I just go buy it, right? I see it, I want that, I'm going to go buy it. I don't need to have 6 things draped over my arm and go into the fitting room and come out with one thing and then go find 4 other things. I hate that process.
Yeah.
I know what I want. I research it ahead of time, and then I go in and get it.
Yeah. That's why I love my wife so much. She's the one exception. She knows what she wants. She goes in and gets it, and that's it. So I've been very fortunate in that.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
You are. Because my wife is she's the shopper. She'll walk around. We'll spend an hour and a half at Dillard's or Von Maur or somewhere, and she'll walk out with nothing.
Uh-huh.
And that was a good shopping trip. It's like, well, you didn't buy anything.
It's unsuccessful.
Yeah. Maybe you learned a few things, but okay. So let's get to the point where the things that we talk about are illustrate what you do, right? Educate about what it takes to get it done, what you've been through, what your thought process was, and things like that. And obviously we've done both those things. Motivating people to now listen to this podcast or watch it and say, you know what, I think that what that guy's doing is really cool. I've got an idea for something. I want to go do it too. What would your advice be? You started this thing at 17, right? Would you do it the same way again?
I think so.
Would you?
Because it got me to where I am now, and I think it made me different because I don't think a lot of people are willing to do it that way because it's a long road, no money, it's hard. I don't know if a lot of people are willing to do hard, but today it's so competitive with social media and ease of information. There's so many brands and products out there, and like we touched on with the apparel, it's so hard to be different in such a saturated market. There's not much that you can do that nobody else is doing,
Yeah. That's kind of what we were talking about with ideas.
Right.
There's no providence over ideas.
Mm-hmm.
There's ideas around every corner, and they're not all good. In fact, most of them are probably pretty bad, but there's always nuggets somewhere. And if you think you have an idea that nobody else has thought about, no, you're an arrogant idiot.
Right.
Sorry.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so I think if you just do it, I think you have to get into it, be okay with failure. I think ultimate failure is quitting and understanding.
Yeah.
I don't know what the stat is. It's like 95% of all businesses fail. I think most of those people just quit.
There's time markers,
right?
So, how many are still in business after 5 years? How many are still in business after 10? And I would say, 95% are not in business 10 years later.
Yeah.
But I know wannabe entrepreneurs who've been prosecuting their startup for 6 or 7 years. And I don't know that that's sustainable, right?
Right.
And I got to be honest with you, my personal bias is where somebody's prosecuting a business and they still don't have any customers, or at least a reliable customer base.
Yeah.
Right. And, the early adopter market, there's a book was written back in the 80s, I think, called Crossing the Chasm. And in that book, the author talks about, when you create something new and novel, people want it. And there's a group of people out there who want the coolest, newest, whatever they think it is, right? The problem is they're just the tip of the iceberg. And if you can't get to the whole iceberg, you're kind of screwed in the long run, because the early adopter market runs out pretty quickly. So that's why I asked you earlier about once you run out of friends and family, who are you selling to?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the economy will, or the market will always tell you if you have a good product or not.
Well, it's the great sanitizer, if you will. It's the great, unwashed shows up and, they'll scrub you down pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And, if you don't hold up, then you don't hold up. And sometimes that's okay. You didn't really have a well-honed idea. But fail early.
Mm-hmm.
Don't waste a lot of people's time or money
Right.
trying to do something that's never going to be successful. But people do.
Yeah.
and that's why I'm asking you the question, because, you started at a very tender age. Most people don't do that. If you'd have asked me back then, I would have said, go spend 10 years working for, Louisville Slugger or Rawlings or one of the other big companies and learn the industry, learn what their biggest problems are, and then come back with, I can do that better, or I can do it differently, that in the long run it'll be better, or I can make a better product, or I can make a big enough difference in whatever it is I do that I can leave them in my dust and still carve out a nice piece of business for myself. That would have been my advice. You just said, I'm jumping in.
Yeah, and I think I could have only done it that way at my age, because I had time, no responsibilities.
Right.
If I were to do that now, no chance.
Right.
I'd be working 2-3 jobs and maybe divorced.
Well, and I think that's the risk of me being divorced occurred multiple times throughout the 46 years I've been married because of those things. Right. I'm taking risk that my wife just could not grasp. And I mean, even leaving my semiconductor job in 1989 was like, are you kidding? My first investor was an angel investor, a lawyer friend of mine in California who happened to be from Joplin, Missouri, knew I was moving back to the Midwest. And he said, Don, I want to invest in your company because I have no clue what you're doing, because the technology was pretty arcane. He said, but if I know what you're giving up to go do this, it must be awesome, right?
Yeah.
So I want to invest some money in you, because anybody willing to take that risk must be doing something worthwhile. And we didn't disappoint, but again, it wasn't a home run. It was probably a solid double, but sometimes that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, you doing it at that age without any industry experience was bold, really bold. I wouldn't recommend that for most people.
No.
To be honest, I wouldn't.
No.
And it sounds like you're not either.
No, I mean, I learn by, I don't do research well. I'm a very distracted person, and so I have to learn by doing, and I think that was my only way of learning, and a lot of naivety of it all of, to me, I was just making a bat and I thought it was cool, somebody wanted to buy it, and before you know it, 5 years went by, and as you get older and more responsibilities, and you get married, and fortunately we didn't have kids yet, but it's like, if we didn't find our partners, or the partners didn't find us, and I don't know if I'd still be doing this, because I don't think it'd be fair to my wife, or to me. I have skill sets that, unfortunately we have to make money, and the wonderful Kansas economy is growing, and it's such a great place to live, but it's not cheap anymore.
Right.
So we have aspirations and goals and places where we want to be, and it just wouldn't be possible. But yeah.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, we haven't gotten to it yet, and we don't need to spend a lot of time on it, but I want to ask you because you're how old now?
31.
31. So you're the same age as my youngest daughter. So you're a generation younger than me. A lot of young people that I meet in the sort of startup space have the notion that starting a business today is more difficult than it was in my day. In my day being the 80s and 90s, I guess. Do you think that?
I think it's the easiest it's ever been. And obviously I don't know previous years, but the resources you have now to start a business are infinite. And I think it couldn't be any easier to start a business as it is today. I think the hard part is maintaining a business.
Finishing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, It's easy to start anything, right?
Right.
I can start learning to play pickleball, but am I ever going to be any good at it? I don't know.
Yeah.
I have to go work at it, right? But if I don't work hard at it, then I won't finish it very well.
Yeah,
right?
and I think a big part of it too is they have like these visions from social media that's propped up, and it may not be true. It may just be a facade on social media.
Yeah.
And I think they expect so much right out of the gate, and maybe don't understand the work that it takes to put into something, or maybe they're not passionate about it and they just want to go off and make money and sell and be free to do whatever they want for the rest of their life.
Well, I think there are some people who would rather be called an entrepreneur than unemployed.
Right, because it's cool now.
Because it's cool to be an entrepreneur. But if you're not actually doing anything, then you really can't call yourself that. And if you're not building a business, you're just building a product. That's two different things. I try to explain that to people when I speak at different things, that there's a difference between being an inventor and being an entrepreneur. Like you, if all you did was make a few bats, right, for your friends and family and some others, and you kept making bats, and you didn't bring on additional people, you didn't bring on financial partners, you didn't think about distribution and retail sales, and you were content just to sell a few bats online so you could make yourself a couple $100,000 a year doing it, okay, that's fine. But that's just a little small business that, it's more like a hobby that makes a little bit of money.
Right.
It's like fixing up cars.
Yeah.
Okay, I can take somebody else's beat up old car and fix it up for them and sell it back to them or give it back to them and charge you a bunch of money for it.
Right.
Okay, but how many cars can I do in a year? 3? 2? You the same way. How many bats can I make in a week? Right. So I want people watching this to recognize, I think what you recognize is that it's never been easier to start a business. I mean, if you go on LinkedIn, you can find the VP of marketing for Shields, and people like that are just out there, right? And you can message them, and whether they message you back or not, who knows, right? But if you pester them enough, they might, right? Back in my day, if you didn't know somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody, you were never going to see that guy.
Yeah.
You were never going to call that guy. You couldn't even get his phone number or his name.
Or didn't even know about him,
Right, and maybe you find out who he is, and you call the main front office, and they might put you through to his voicemail, and then you'll never hear back from him.
Yeah.
And that was the same way finding a job back then, right? You didn't have Indeed or people like that out there, and it's a very different world. But I have run across young people who somehow think that life is much harder for them today than it was for me. And when I ask, even my own son-in-laws, I have three daughters, so I have 3 son-in-laws I've inherited, and I ask them these questions, and they're like, "Oh yeah, well, Don, it's a lot harder to buy a house today than it was when you were a kid or when you were my age." Really? How? Well, the interest rates are so high. Do you know what my first interest rate was? It was like 9% or 10. My second house, it was 11 or 14%.
Right.
And you're whining about what? 6, 7? Sorry. Well, we don't make as much money. What do you made? Really? You don't make as much on a relative basis? No, you're making more than me.
Yeah.
But yet people have this notion that it's harder, and not that I need to go out and dispel that notion. It's just that when you sitting in front of me with an example of, a generation difference between us can do, then I'd like to point that out because I think it's relevant.
Yeah.
And so I do believe that what you're doing is interesting. I think there's a great opportunity, and I wish you a great deal of success with it.
Thank you.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
Not that I can think of. Yeah, I think that's pretty much my story, at least. So,
well, thanks for being on.
Oh, it's been an honor.
I hope our audience buys a JAWBat from you guys.
Yeah. When you do office ones, I should have brought one for you, but we were a little behind, and but I'm kicking myself for that. But no, I'll still get you one. But no, yeah, we pretty much anything you can think of. Love to have people buy the shop, and we will be moving here.
You do custom fittings, I saw on your website.
We do.
What does a custom fitting for a bat look like? It's like, I know that for golf clubs, but what does that look like for a bat?
Very similar to the golf club experience.
You analyze swings and things like that?
So that's what we're implementing in our new space. Right now we don't have space for a batting cage.
Okay.
So our new spot will have a batting cage, and we plan to have some analytical tools to kind of back up some numbers. And but, right now we just use my wealth of knowledge on wood bats, bring guys in, kind of go through, show them the process of everything to kind of get them educated on what to expect, and then go through different bat models. And, for kids that are 11 to 14, we kind of have an idea already.
Yeah.
They're just not big enough or strong enough. There's some exceptions, but
and
then when we get to the high school and college, that's when it gets real fun, and we can really tweak guys that are very particular, and we like the particular ones. We can do anything, and it shows our assets for sure. But we fit them for their bat model, whatever works for their swing, and soon we'll have numbers to back that, which every kid is analytical now. And then we make it for them right then and there, so they get to see the process and the bat made, and
that's cool.
It's a fun process. So.
All right, well, Jacob, thanks for being on.
Thank
really
you guys.
Appreciate it.
Best
of luck to you.
Can't express how much I appreciate what you're doing. So
you're welcome.